It was a blustery Tuesday evening in the bustling city of Valeria, when officers at a busy checkpoint signaled a gleaming silver sedan to stop. Tinted windows were common, especially for the city's elite, but a strange anonymous tip received just an hour earlier had piqued their suspicion. "Stop that car. Something inside isn't right." The sedan smoothly pulled over. A door opened, and a man emerged. He wore an immaculate black suit, a pristine white shirt, and shoes that made no sound. His neatly parted hair was slick with rain, and when he smiled, a diamond stud in his tooth shimmered like a distant star. "Good evening, officer," the man said, his voice calm and smooth like polished stone. "I am Reverend Elias Thorne, head minister of Abundant Grace Cathedral. I'm on my way to a prayer vigil." "God bless you." The officer, however, didn't return the smile. He looked Elias up and down. "Please open your trunk," he stated firmly. Reverend Elias raised an eyebrow. "There's nothing inside," he replied, his tone quiet but laced with tension. "Sir, it's just a routine check," the officer responded. "It'll only take a minute." Elias glanced at his watch. "I am a servant of God," he said. "Souls are waiting for me, I can't be late. Just open the trunk, Reverend. You'll be on your way shortly." But Elias didn't move. Slowly, he reached into the inner pocket of his coat and pulled out a thick bundle of crisp currency. He smiled again. "Take this, my brothers. Let me go and do the Lord's work." The mood shifted instantly. One officer took a step back, another frowned. "We don't want your money, Reverend. Open the trunk now." Elias's smile vanished. His hand dropped. He said nothing. The officer stepped closer. "If you won't open it, we will." They moved to the back of the car. Elias followed slowly, his brow now beaded with sweat that mixed with the rain. The trunk clicked open, and the world went silent. Inside, wrapped in white shrouds, were two human heads, fresh and still bleeding. The horrifying smell rushed out like a burst of noxious gas. One officer gasped, another shouted, "By the heavens!" Phones appeared, people ran, some screamed, some fainted. A woman in the crowd dropped to the floor, weeping, "No, no. Not Reverend Elias, the man of miracles." In minutes, the news swept across Valeria like a wildfire. Phones buzzed, people wept, others sat in shock. The man once called the healer, the giver, the preacher, now carried death in his car. With hands on their heads, people cried like lost children. "God forbid. Not Reverend Elias," one woman shouted. "It's a lie, a big lie." Inside a nearby bus, another woman clutched her chest, as if her heart was about to leap out. "He gave me food last holiday season," she whispered. Reverend Elias wasn't just any man. He paid school fees for struggling families, he helped people with their rent, he prayed for those who couldn't find work. His hands were known for giving, not hurting. They said he wouldn't even harm a fly. His smile was warm like sunshine after a heavy storm, his voice gentle like laying your head on a soft pillow. Children called him Father, women called him Man of God. Even the market vendors respectfully lowered their gaze when he walked by. But now, the police were saying something that made everyone freeze. Those two heads in the trunk were his daughters, Serafina and Celeste, the same girls he always told the world were studying abroad. A trader in the market dropped her basket and screamed, "Abroad?" He said they were doing their degrees. Men sat down like carved statues, silent, unblinking. A school teacher nearby whispered, "What kind of father would do that?" But no one answered, because the answer was too heavy to carry. The news spread like a wildfire in the dry season, from the bustling markets of Rivendell to the exclusive estates in Grandview Heights. Everyone asked the same question, why would he do such a thing? But nobody had an answer. And the air in Valeria was no longer normal air, it was filled with shock, fear, and deep confusion. The inherited burden. Long before the black suit and shiny diamond stud, his name was just Elias Thorne, the quiet son of a powerful preacher. His father, Bishop Gabriel Thorne, was known as the Lion of the Living Word Assembly. His voice could shake the walls, his prayers, people said, could break chains. They called him Fire from Heaven, some even claimed his hands had healed the mentally ill. Elias was the third of 4 sons, all of whom followed their father's footsteps. Brother Marcus, the eldest, had a thunderous voice during exorcisms. He shouted as if battling demons face to face. People writhed on the floor when he prayed, some claimed they saw smoke. Deacon Peter, the second, was always in pristine suits. His church had bright lights, cameras, and giant screens. He didn't shout, but his words cut deep, a smooth talker politicians loved. Prophet Daniel, the youngest, wasn't one to talk much. He was the quiet one, said angels whispered to him. He'd close his eyes, raise his hands, and say, I hear, I hear. And people cried, and people fell when Daniel touched them. Then there was Elias, the last son. He didn't shout. He didn't wear fancy suits. He never claimed angels whispered in his ears. He just prayed slowly, gently, like a soft breeze brushing across your skin. After their father passed, Elias took over the old family church, once known as Zion's Beacon Tabernacle. He gave it a new name, Abundant Grace Cathedral. People used to say, he walks like his father, he prays like his father, he is his father's heart. And they came, not chasing miracles, but because they felt loved. Widows received food, children got school supplies, tenants who couldn't pay rent were helped. And through it all, Elias smiled. But inside, something wasn't right. He watched his brothers rise like stars. While they glowed like polished gold, he sat quietly in shadows. They performed miracles, he read scriptures. They flew to foreign lands, he walked to early morning prayers. And even though the crowd clapped for him every Sunday, his heart felt hollow, like a talking drum without a stick. He wanted to burn bright like fire, but all he carried felt like water. Then it happened. One Sunday evening, in the town of Oakhaven, the event that would change his life forever. It was a massive crusade. The entire town gathered like ants around spilled honey. The stage was white, the lights bright, and the crowd noisy with expectation. All 4 Thorne brothers were there. Each one was challenged to show that they were truly called by God. 4 people were brought forward. A blind man, a mute woman, a man afflicted by madness, and a crippled man, one for each brother. The drums stopped, the air grew tense. Everyone waited. First up was Brother Marcus, the loud one. He marched to the crippled man, who sat on the floor with legs thin like broomsticks and eyes full of hope. Marcus raised his voice like thunder. In the name of Jesus, rise up and walk. He clapped 3 times, touched the man's legs, and the man stood up. The crowd went wild. People jumped, some writhed on the ground, women flung their scarves in the air. Power, they shouted. Next came Deacon Peter, the clean and sharp one. He stepped to the blind man, whose eyes looked gray, lost, like someone trapped in thick fog. Peter didn't raise his voice. He just smiled, dipped his fingers into holy water, and gently wiped the man's face. In the name of the Most High, he whispered. The man blinked once, twice, then cried out, I can see. I can see. People clapped, screamed, and shouted, True man of God. Then it was Prophet Daniel's turn, the quiet one. He walked up to the mute woman. She looked at him with empty eyes, lips sealed by years of silence. Daniel poured oil on her head, then wiped her mouth with a white handkerchief. In the spirit of the living God, he said. The woman coughed, then opened her mouth. Thank you, she whispered. And the crowd exploded. Praises filled the air like birds flying out of a cage. 3 brothers, 3 miracles, 3 mighty cheers. Now all eyes turned to Reverend Elias. He stepped forward slowly, his task the man afflicted by madness, wild and angry, chained to two strong ushers. The man laughed for no reason, pulled his own hair, and screamed at the sky. Elias swallowed hard. He laid his hands on the man's head. "In Jesus' name," he said. The man just laughed. Elias prayed louder. The man barked like a dog. He poured anointing oil. The man spat in his face. Elias shouted. He wept. He knelt. He stood. Nothing changed. The man afflicted by madness danced in circles, then suddenly pulled Elias by the collar. The man grabbed Elias by the collar and shouted, "Leave me alone, empty man." The crowd froze. No claps, no cheering, just quiet whispers drifting through the air. Maybe God didn't call him, maybe he's not like his brothers, maybe he's just empty. And Elias heard all of it. But he didn't say a word. He just went home and sat alone in the dark that night. Not a single star appeared in the sky. The descent. From that moment, he couldn't sleep. His heart felt like a sack full of wet sand. The church grew cold, his prayers felt dry. But the whispers, they were loud, louder than drums. So he left Valeria. First, he traveled to Silverwood to Mountain Crest Revival Ministries, where his brother Marcus was leading thousands. Marcus's office was massive, red carpet, strong air conditioning, and miracle photos on every wall. Outside, people shouted, fell, and writhed, the place was always packed. Elias entered and sat, head down. "Brother," he said softly, "what's your secret?" Marcus laughed a short, loud laugh. "Secret? There's no secret. Just pray, fast, believe the word." "But I do all of that," Elias replied, his voice tightening. Still nothing changes. Marcus's smile vanished. "So, are you saying God is not faithful? We all came from the same Father, same house, same Bible." Elias stood up. His heart sank. He had never felt smaller. He walked out. Next, he went to Metropolis to Heaven's Gate Worship Center to visit Deacon Peter. Peter wore a shiny white suit and perfume that smelled like fresh money. His office looked like a bank lobby, his phone kept ringing. "Welcome, little brother," Peter said, smiling with only one side of his face. "I came to ask," Elias said. "What am I missing?" Peter leaned back. "Ministry is more than just prayer," he said. "It's about branding, strategy." "Branding?" Elias asked, confused. "Yes, the lights, the stage, the voice, the outfits. You have to look like what people want to follow." Elias sat in silence. "But what about the power?" he asked. Peter smiled again, but this time the smile felt cold. The meeting ended there. Finally, Elias went to see Prophet Daniel. No big office, no fancy clothes, just a simple white robe. He was sitting outside quietly, watching the sky. Elias joined him on the bench. "Brother," he whispered, his voice trembling, "what's the secret to real power?" Daniel turned slowly to him. "Some vessels carry fire," he said. "Others carry water." Elias blinked. "You mean I'm not meant for miracles?" Daniel looked away and said, "Everyone is called for something. Stop chasing what isn't yours." That night, Elias returned to his hotel room. He sat on the floor, removed his shoes, dropped his Bible, and cried, not small tears, but big, heavy sobs, like a baby mourning a mother. Because his own blood, the ones he ate with, grew up with, laughed with, they gave him nothing but silence. And now, silence was all he had left. The church, once lively with singing and dancing, now echoed like a graveyard. No claps, no music, no amens. Chairs sat empty, dust gathered on the pulpit like forgotten memories. Still, Reverend Elias stood there every Sunday, hoping, waiting. But the doors didn't open. Even the cleaner stopped coming. Outside, the world moved on. Inside, everything was falling apart. His wife, Mother Grace, couldn't take it anymore. One quiet evening, she folded her clothes into a black travel bag. She didn't cry, she didn't yell. She looked him in the eyes and said, "This stress is too much. I'm leaving before I lose myself." She walked out the door, didn't slam it. Elias sighed. His daughters, Seraphina and Celeste, stopped laughing. Their giggles, once bright as morning birds, had disappeared like a stream in a dry season. They stayed locked in their room all day. Reverend Elias told everyone they had traveled to a distant country, studying medicine and law. But that was a lie. He had locked them in himself. The windows were nailed shut, their phones were taken away. He told himself it was for their protection. "There are evil people out there," he would whisper. "Witches, jealous pastors. They want to use my children against me." So he hid them, just for a while, he told himself. But days became weeks, weeks turned into months, and one morning, as he stared at their door, the silence behind it felt too deep, too final. Now, their heads were in his trunk, wrapped in cloth soaked in blood. And the world kept asking, why? But the answer wasn't in any police report. It was sitting quietly in his empty house, where even the walls refused to speak. The dark packed. One cold night, Elias drove towards Valeria through long, lonely roads. His hands gripped the steering wheel as if he were holding on to life. His eyes were red, his lips cracked. No music, no prayers. He was searching, not for peace, but for something darker, deeper, dangerous. He had heard whispers about a man called Brother Shadow. They said he healed without touching, they said he called rain by name, they said he once disappeared during worship. Nobody knew where he lived, only the truly desperate ever found him. And Elias was desperate. Just before midnight, he found it, a small house on the edge of Valeria, surrounded by trees and silence. Candles burned on the steps. Before he could knock, the door creaked open. A barefoot man stood there, eyes sharp like broken glass. His lips didn't move, but his voice rang clear, "I know why you're here." Elias nearly fell to his knees. "I want power," he whispered. "Not just from Bible verses. The kind that makes the blind see. That makes crowds scream." The man nodded slowly. "Then feed the spirits," he said. "Not with prayers, not with fasting. Feed them blood." Elias blinked, his heart pounding. "What kind of blood?" The man smiled a cold smile that carried no joy. "The blood of love. The kind that hurts your heart. That's what they like." Elias staggered back, his legs weak. He turned and ran. That night, he didn't sleep. He cried. He writhed on the ground. He begged God. But deep inside, the hunger to be powerful didn't leave. It only grew. 1 week later, he returned. Brother Shadow was waiting. No words were spoken. He gave Elias a bowl. He handed him a list. He drew strange symbols on his chest, symbols that burned without flame. The air smelled like smoke and sorrow. That night, Reverend Elias made a vow, not with ink, but with something darker. And from that moment, something inside him broke, and something else rose up. The next Sunday, everything in Abundant Grace Cathedral changed. The air felt thick, heavy, even the chairs looked like they were watching. Elias stepped up to the altar, calm, not shaking, no shouting, no sweating. He raised his hand. "Stand," he said. A woman who had been blind for 8 years screamed, "I can see." The church exploded. Some people wept, some writhed on the floor, others fainted. Then he touched a boy in a wheelchair. "Walk." The boy stood, then took one step, then another, then he ran. His mother writhed on the floor, crying, "God has come down." Then came another woman. She had been barren for 10 years. Now she held 3 babies in her arms. "Triplets," she shouted. Triplets, just from one touch from Reverend Elias. Miracle flow, that's what people called it. Cars lined the road like a royal wedding. The small church could no longer hold the sea of people. First came plastic chairs, then tents, then more tents. The overflow outside became its own service. They came from Ashford, from Newport, from Manchester. Some arrived in wheelchairs, others held medical files like prayers. "Touch me, Father," they begged. "Just your shadow, sir." "Lay hands, Pastor." Reverend Elias smiled on the outside, but something else smiled inside him too, something darker. He bought a sleek black limousine, big, shiny, luxurious. Then another. Then he built a cathedral, tall and wide like a king's crown. He launched a TV program, Touch of Grace, every Sunday night. Families tuned in. Even senators came quietly, carrying envelopes. Celebrities knelt before him. His name changed. No more Reverend Elias. Now they called him God's chosen vessel. The same man who once failed to heal a man afflicted by madness now opened blind eyes like flipping light switches. But behind every miracle, there was a shadow. A shadow that clapped louder than any crowd. The power looked sweet like ripe mango, but inside it was poison. Elias smiled on screen, but at night he had no rest, because the spirits, the ones who gave him power, didn't work for free. They came, not in daylight, but in whispers, in dreams. Their voices never changed, "Feed us." Not goats, not cows, not sinners. Feed us the blood of love. Not strangers. Loved ones. The ones who knew his laugh. The ones who called him by name before anyone called him Father. The first year, he gave them his cousin, the one who helped him build the first wooden altar. The next year, his uncle, the man who raised him when his father passed. Then it was a friend, then a choir leader. Quietly, without a trace, they vanished like smoke. But no one asked questions, because the miracles flowed, and people cared more about results than roots, more about healing than truth. But Elias was changing. His smile dried up, his laugh became hollow, his hands shook after each offering, because each time he knew he was giving away a piece of himself, a chunk of his own heart to shadows that never stopped eating. Year after year, the weight became heavier, like carrying a coffin made of memory and tears. But if he stopped, the power would go. The crowds would vanish. The cameras would stop rolling. So he kept feeding them. He kept bleeding inside, until only one thing was left to give, his own blood and bone. The unveiling. One evening, after a strange fast on the hills of Shadowfen, Elias drove home through the quiet roads of Whisperwind. His eyes were dark, he saw even darker. A police checkpoint stopped him. He smiled faintly. They asked him to open the trunk. He said no. They insisted. He hesitated. Then he opened it. And there, inside, wrapped in cloth that was still wet, were 2 human heads, fresh, still wrapped like a sacrifice. One officer dropped his gun, another whispered, "God help us." A third ran to the patrol van, stumbling. Phones came out. Sirens screamed. But Elias didn't run. He just stood there, silent, still. His black suit now felt like ashes wrapped around his body, not stained with oil, but with something colder, blood. They arrested him. The road was quiet again, only the echoes of sirens and one woman screaming from a distance, "Not Pastor. Not Father." The station room was small. The single bulb above flickered like a dying star. The air smelled of metal and sweat. Elias sat on a metal chair, both hands chained to the desk. His suit, once grand, was now grey with dirt, dust, and regret. The officer across from him said nothing for a long time, just stared. Then slowly, he pushed the recorder forward. Talk. And Elias, the man once called God's chosen vessel, broke. Tears welled from his eyes like sudden rain on a dry field. His lips trembled, his voice cracked. I didn't want this, he whispered. I swear I didn't. And the truth poured out like water from a broken calabash. He told them everything, about Oakhaven, about Brother Shadow, about the spirits. They told me, his eyes were red, distant, if I wanted real power, the kind that moves mountains, opens blind eyes, I had to give them blood. The officers listened, silent, stunned. But not just any blood, he continued. It had to be someone I loved. One leaned forward slowly, eyes narrowing. How long? Elias swallowed hard. 6 years, he said. 6 people. He nodded, broken. Each one a piece of him. My cousin, my uncle, my best friend, a quiet girl, and the last ones. His voice dropped to a whisper, my daughters. The room froze. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. One officer stood abruptly and walked out, unable to take it. Another shut the case file without saying a word. Elias just sat there, head bowed like a tree that broke in the wind, tears streaming, chains cold on his wrists. And in the corner of that small police station, the man once held as a prophet of fire now sat as a prisoner of darkness, with blood on his soul and nothing left to save. Far away, in a quiet village where the sun is red and goats roam through empty footpaths, Elder Anya sat under a mango tree. She peeled cassava slowly, her wrapper tied neatly around her waist, her face calm, soft with the grace that only old women wear, the kind who have seen storms and still smile. Then a boy from town ran into the compound, panting, dust on his feet. Elder! Elder, he shouted. Your son! Your son, Reverend Elias. He's been caught. They found human heads in his car. The knife dropped from her hand. What did you say? Her voice was small, like dry leaves whispering in the dry season wind. The boy nodded frantically. 2 heads, Elder. His daughters. Everyone's talking. It's all over. Elder Anya screamed, a sound like thunder cracked from her chest. She collapsed, her wrapper flew loose, her head hit the red earth. Dust rose around her like smoke. God have mercy. Neighbors cried. They rushed to her, poured water on her face, lifted her gently. Elder, talk to us. She opened her eyes slowly, tears ran down the side of her face. No, she whispered. Not my son. Not my Elias. For days, she didn't eat, she didn't speak much. She only cried like a mother who planted prayers and harvested pain. I carried him in my womb, she murmured. I anointed his head with oil. I prayed over his cradle. I raised him to serve God. Her eyes searched the sky. So how? How did he become this? But the sky said nothing. Only the wind moved, and not even the trees could give her the answer. The rest of the family said nothing. Brother Marcus stopped preaching. Deacon Peter turned off the lights in his church. Prophet Daniel no longer prophesied. The name that once opened doors, Bishop Gabriel Thorne, now hung in the air like a curse, too heavy to be spoken, too stained to be remembered without pain. A shadow had fallen on the lineage, a deep, choking silence filled their homes, their hearts. And one question refused to go away, where did we lose him? The echo of silence. The prison cell was small. 4 walls, no window, no fan. Just one iron bed, one thin blanket, and one man. No black suit, no white shirt, no pulpit, no crowd shouting, Amen. Only prison clothes smelling of dust and regret. Elias sat in the corner, his back against the wall, his hands resting on his knees, eyes hollow, staring at nothing. Silence wrapped around him like a dark, cold shroud. His lips moved slowly, soft, weak, barely a whisper. I just wanted to serve God. I just wanted to be great. No answer. Only the walls. Only the silence. He remembered the empty days, the cold mornings when no one came to church, the long nights crying on the altar. He remembered their laughter, his daughters, their joy once filled the house like morning sunlight. Then he remembered the bowl, the oath, the blood, the whispers in the dark, the power that touched blind eyes but burned his soul in secret. The spirits had eaten well. They drank deep. They gave him miracles, fame, crowds, a name. Then they left, and took everything, his peace, his family, his daughters, his name, his soul. Now, Reverend Elias sat like a broken chair. No voice, no fire, no fight. Just a man who chased light and fell into darkness. And in that cold, silent prison cell, he finally understood, not all power is from heaven. When Reverend Elias was locked behind bars, the gates of Abundant Grace Cathedral were locked too, with thick chains, big padlocks. Government vans. No prayers, no shouting, only silence. The same gates that once opened to crowds and cameras now stood like a mouth sealed by death. Inside the compound, dust covered the chairs. The big screens that once showed miracles now flickered to black. The altar where people wept and writhed now stood empty, just wood and shadow. The oil once poured with joy now smelled like old smoke. And the pastors, they ran. Some to other states, some out of the country. One was found hiding in a hotel, trembling. The fire was gone, not just from the church, but from the hearts of all who once believed in it. And so the story ended, not with thunder, not with glory, but with a whisper, a warning. Not every miracle comes from God, and not every man behind the pulpit walks in the light. She was shaking like a leaf in the dry season wind. The church members gathered outside, crying, collapsing. Some held pictures of Reverend Elias and wept. Others screamed, "We knew. We saw signs." But when asked why they never spoke, they said nothing, because fear is a silence louder than thunder. Whispers filled the city, if Reverend Elias could do this, who else? Elder Maya's son fainted after drinking holy water. One woman clutched her child and said, "Should we test our pastor too?" Another whispered, "I no longer trust any miracle again." The government took notice. Investigations spread. Cameras rolled. Files opened. Even the big names began to tremble, because when one snake is caught, the whole forest listens. And just like that, the fire that once roared through Abundant Grace Cathedral went out. Only ashes remained. And the name, God's chosen vessel, became a warning, not a praise. That is how it ended. Reverend Elias, the quiet one, the one who prayed soft and smiled deep, the one people called Father, the one widows loved, the one who gave food, school fees, and hope, the man who only wanted to serve God, he became a shadow, a man with a dark secret, a man who lit candles with blood. The church never opened again. Weeds grew tall around the once sacred building. Spiders spun webs on the altar. Dust covered the chairs. And the great wooden cross now leaned like a broken promise. People changed. They stopped running to churches without question. They stopped shouting, "Man of God," at every loud voice. They started watching. They started listening. They started asking, where is this power really coming from? Because now they understood, not every hand that heals is holy. Not every voice that shouts, "Fire," comes from heaven. Some carry chains. Some carry blood. So, if you ever see a man doing wonders, but there's no love in his eyes. If you see a preacher shining like the sun by day, but darker than night in secret, look closer, listen deeper. Because sometimes, the devil wears a white suit too.